Alrighty. A couple of people ain't terribly enthused by all this system. I'm not really surprised by that. Must admit it isn't the most brilliant system. It is working. Now that this is sitting here, it does work. But it's like everything, you know, you've got a lot of... well, you've got flow restrictions anyway because we run a 19mm line, but you have too many ups and downs. You start playing with thin lines, you get really slow flow, easy restrictions, you know, and it's not sort of... let's put it like this. This isn't that much roof space that it won't be able to move all this water faster than it comes down under most rain circumstances, under slow rain. In Western Australia we used to have fast rain and it'd be inches, like 3.5 inches in 2 hours and stuff like that. And, you know, occasionally, once every 10 years, we get that sort of stuff here too. But, yeah, one of those things, it's low line flow, and these are supposed to act as a buffer, but if we decided to get an inch of rain in an hour, they probably just would overflow, you know, and low line speed with a lot of airlock issues, and a lot of the problems with all of this is purely because the fact that we've gone from, you know, that height there to only an inch or two down and then back up again, but it's weaved around and, you know, up and down slightly and all this sort of stuff, and it's just, if it was a real decent fall, it'd be a lot better, but it's never really going to be good with thin lines like that. Which, you know, isn't that big of a problem considering it's going into a 19mm, but all the same, it's a lot of restrictions on the flow, and it's like a guy who worked in the auto industry, old German guy. In fact, his father used to manufacture his own car line brand in Germany, but he said to me, he's a CAD designer, he said to me, you know, few interesting things. Some of the gear sticks and tail lights take more designing than some of the major parts because so minute and small. And he said another thing about engines and cars in general, the more parts you have, the more parts there are to fail. And it's too true, you know. And if you keep a system simple, you should be pretty right. This is 3-inch, 75mm. A lot of standard line, like the grey water line for the, what's his name, is 90mm. The one around the other side was a 90mm, that white pipe. It's the same as a grey water line for laundry. Doesn't mean I can't go and stick a 90mm on this. No big deal. You just screw on one side or whatever. And there's ones that'll bring you from 75mm out to 90mm, which you get these connectors that go everything from 2-inch all up through the standard sizes. And yeah, you glue them together with your PVC glue. But I think, like a lot of this, like when I was putting this gutter up, I was worried about getting the gutter up before it was going to rain, and I couldn't get the silicone to set on wet steel. This was all sort of really left to the last minute due to busy being playing around with other things. And I think ultimately a lot of this is all going to get the heave-ho next year, and I'll put in water lines, proper 90mm stormwater, dig it into the ground, trench it into the ground. In that I might trench all this thing into the ground, because that's been something that could have happened for quite a while. But instead of just dropping an inch or two, drop it down a decent amount. Leaving it a bit late now because the soil's wet, and when you try and dig, some of the stuff with all the cypress pine stuff in it, especially all out there where it's all still loose with all the cypress pine droppings, you know, leaves rotting away, that's easy enough to get into. You start getting up near the laundry where it goes back to straight black soil, and a lot of this here is straight black soil, and it's as sticky as hell, and it's damn near impossible to trench out. So I think that's something best left for the summer, to trench this in at least to this point here and back towards where the tank is, and and just where it comes into the laundry there, you know, just all this, sink it into the ground, along with 90mm line that, I mean, this is all high up to keep a bit of a gravity flow. This actually works very well for gravity flow, but it's, you know, it's a 2-inch line. It's got an angle the whole way, except a little bit of a dip there. But ultimately, I want to put in 90mm line right through, trench it into all this, which is going to take a while to dig it all in, because I actually used to trench in 90mm line as a job when I was building. The goal was, it always seemed I was the sucker that would be digging the trenches. And ultimately, I want to put 2 IBCs inside of this. Now this has been a water tank. They used to call these wells. I've seen another guy with one that was, holy cow, you would not believe the size of it. It was absolutely massive. I mean, it was like a frickin' underground nuclear missile bunker. You know, it was absolutely huge. Not a nuclear missile bunker, but I'll put it like this. Size-wise, it would have been about 20 yards deep. That's 20 yards just straight down by about 10 yards wide. And that was completely made out of concrete with some sort of a big wire shell cage into sand. Now this here is made out of bluestone stone and concrete, and I'm pretty certain there's bricks too, because I used to be able to see this a lot better 5 years ago, before all this come out here, when it was just sort of the thicker stuff in there was as far as it all, you know, basically that thick stuff you can see there. That's as far as it went 5 years ago, and I could see into this quite well. And there's been a lot of ash thrown in this, and there's some of the bottom of this is just completely collapsed and cracked. Like, instead of being flat, it's sitting on a 45-degree angle. It wouldn't hold a drop of water. Having said that, it's sort of a step-down ledge. It goes down and then out a bit and then back down. I have a bunch of ash and, well, basically random shit that was scraped out to be able to put the slab in for this thing here, for the laundry. That's still sitting out in the paddock on a heap of ash and other random stuff, because it's one of my major bonfire piles. I want to get that plus probably more random bits of ash and shit and dirt and whatever. Put it in here, try and pack it down so it's kind of firm enough, and put 2 IBCs in here. Run a 90mm water line. I might have to break out one of these edge where I probably don't really want to, but yeah, might have to. Just notch out, or actually cut in. You can use an angle grinder and a stone disc to cut a notch in, and then chip a notch in through one of the bigger ones. Don't really want to break up the structure of it too much, because I still want it to hold strong. And put rainwater straight into, I reckon I could fit probably 2 IBCs in here that would be sitting, the top of them would be, you know, a few inches below ground level, below where my feet are right now, probably 6 inches below it. And we can actually get these, they call them rainwater diverters. We get a lot of fandangle things, rainwater related. I mean, I'm talking, you know, tell the amount of water that's in your rainwater tank using ultrasonics on a wireless system with a little screen inside your house. You know, a little LCD screen that runs wirelessly to tell you what your tank levels are, you know, and you sit it inside your head. Everything you can imagine we can get. We can even get this thing that's a 90mm 3-way bit with a big piece at the top with a big flat bit, and you turn it, and it's basically a 3-way tap. The incoming comes in here, it can go straight ahead, or you can turn it out that way. And put one of those on, so I can turn it to one IBC. When that fills up, I can turn it to the other IBC. Then, because that 90mm line is a cheapo, it can't handle much pressure, and I think my little submersible pump probably wouldn't be able to handle the force of pushing it 200 metres anyway. have an IBC on the other side of the driveway with that 19mm line plumbed into the bottom. Run the submersible pump, you know, the little thing I got from the aquarium joint, which also has a 19mm line. Run it from IBC in here, just a line over the other side of the driveway to fill up the IBC on the other side of the driveway. And when I'm doing my washing or whatever, flick it on as well while the generator's running and fill up the IBC there and let it flow out. Or basically have a tap on the back of it, fill the IBC up, go and change IBCs down the bottom of the hill, come back up the top of the hill, turn the tap on and empty out one IBC here into one IBC there, so none of the ones down over the edge of the hill actually overflow. And just do that every week, and yeah, that'll be a pretty straightforward system. You know, have mesh on the top of the IBCs, like that, you know, white mesh, so you can just lean over, pull it off, chuck all the leaves off, flick all the leaves off the top of it, whatever, and then, yeah, have your little water pump that you can flick on and just fill the IBC on that side of the driveway. And that'll take me, you know, a few more IBCs to get. There's one place that's a commercial joint there. I've got a different manager, and I don't know if I can get the IBCs from the same place I did at $60 an IBC, but there's another place I've since found. I knew they sold IBCs, but I went past there the other day, and they also sell IBCs for $60, so I can go there and get another 3 or another friggin' 20. And hey, it might not be out of the question. When you compare the IBC prices to big bloody tanks like that and the bullshit in setting up tanks like that, it's not just getting a tank, you know, you've got to be here to have it delivered and all that sort of stuff, you know, and you got to go and get gravel in to lay a base out, flatten the base out, compact it by driving back and forwards over it after trying to screed it out reasonably straight, you know, and they cost a fucking ton. Comparative to just getting IBCs, and IBCs about half the price and take no time at all to just drop them on the ground and leave it as is. But anyway, that's sort of what I'll do when I got money. I wouldn't mind, I've just been talking to Tony as well about this, getting some of this grey water system. This actually worked quite well. Sheep have got used to jumping over the top of it. It's a bit of a ramshackle thing, but I'll tell you what, definitely helped the fig tree in the end of the season. Shut up! Bloody crow. Another one I've been thinking of, because you may know there's no grass here in the summer, and people have assumed it's a desert. It's just the way it goes here. Things just get stripped out absolutely bare, and you don't have any green grass at all. It is just completely dry. I mean, ridiculously dry. And that's just the way it goes every single summer. It's not terribly good for the sheep. Sometimes we put down sheep lick. Other people spend every dollar they would have made on sheep just feeding their own sheep, but other people also have bigger properties and, you know, harvest their own grain and then feed their own grain out to sheep. Whereas at my sister's, where it's all green during the summer, it's frozen solid in the winter. Nothing grows at all because everything is below freezing all the time. And then as a result, it's like what you face in the States. You've got to basically feed them all winter. No other option. And that's the same sort of thing that happens where she is. They don't call it the Snowy River region for nothing. Anyway, I wouldn't mind trying to be able to divert some of this grey water to water parts, I mean, where the grey water outlet comes out for the laundry. The grass sort of gets watered a bit round there, but it sort of goes into this concrete pit thing I made to be able to sit in the little 20-litre, what is it, like 4 or 5 gallon containers that I water the silver beet with. I wouldn't mind making a bit of a better setup in regards to that, to be able to actually irrigate a patch of ground to cause some of the ground to, sprout green grass, so that we've basically got green like we have now, just in a little patch. It might only be not much bigger than what you're looking at here. During the hot part of summer, fueled completely off, or irrigated rather, completely off grey water. That was just pissing on the ground anyway, in an effort to give them a little bit of something green to be able to eat when everything else is just as dry as shit and just a dust bowl. Actually, the fire service in this state refers to it as the tinderbox, because everything's so exceedingly dry that one lousy match and you can wipe out friggin' umpteen properties. Everything's so liable to light up, that it's a real... People smell smoke and the panic's on, and people in the fire brigade, the panic is on when they smell smoke, and during that time of the year. And yeah, it's just the way the season is here. I mean, it's surprising that this is one of the colder states of Australia, or considered one of probably the coldest state after Tasmania, and yet it goes so friggin' dry in the summer, I remember when we had the drought in '09, and I shit you not, it was close to freezing point. I was out with the forklift early one morning, and it was close to freezing, and I was putting around and freezing my ass off, and it was so dry the dust was coming off everything I was dealing with. Although it was close to freezing point and it was the middle of winter, there was dust coming off the ground all over the place. But that was the year that we had a hell of a drought, and when I was working at the nursery. Another interesting thing, just as a bit of a side note, later on, when it turned to summer, it got that hot that there were some plants, it didn't matter how much we watered them. We were literally watering these plants every 10 minutes. I shit you not, every 10 minutes. And the bloody thing still died anyway. It was just the sheer heat, and it didn't matter how much water we poured onto them. It didn't matter how much shade they were under. They just died of sheer heat. That was celery. That was the real issue. But intriguing, because I'd never seen something that would die regardless of how much it was watered. And it was a pretty rough old year. Alrighty. As some of you may remember, the bits of tree that I showed that I assumed had been dumped. I couldn't see much out of the car headlights. Just moved all this out the way before. But that would be it. Turns out I wasn't looking closely enough. Well, I couldn't really see out of the car headlights, but they've actually pruned the tree high up with one of those pole pruning saws, like the pole and you got the miniature chainsaw on the end. And so they had actually trimmed it high up, but I couldn't see that under the headlights of the car at night, and I did see it when I was picking these up. But they used to chop stuff down and then drive along and mulch it. Now they just chop it down, drop it on the side of the road and keep going. And at that point I come along and grab hold of it. This is the power company, because this was under the power lines, or it's a subcontractor of the power company. So yeah. But those are the same lines that I could connect to my house for a lousy $50,000, which wasn't going to happen. Don't know exactly what tree it is, but it's some sort of European thing that has corky, thick bark all over it. Bit of rubbing going on between the two there by the looks. But anyway, I got the little lops there, and I got the reciprocating saw, and we'll make a go of just snipping the rubbish off, and I'll probably, I might, take it down to where I'll be burning later on. I found I've got a few fire lighters, so the last bit of diesel I've got, I can actually light that thing again and burn some more of the box thorn sticks with the last of my diesel, and I'll just use the fire lighters I've got to light the wood heater tonight. And then I'm going to be getting more diesel tomorrow. So this is crazy amounts of bark on this thing. There's one area near where all my blackberries are, I think, where they're just stacks and stacks of these, just heaps of these same variety of trees where I go and pick blackberries. But anyway, I got the little, this is all pretty much green. I mean, as I said, I only seen it a few days ago, and they would have just been creeping up with a little truck and a blooming bit of chainsaw and pole pruning gear and just taking all this out. I mean, she's decent size though. I mean, that's pretty good for a wood heater. For the wood stove, rather. So anyway, I'll... a little bit of green stuff there, and I'll probably just dump it here for now and slice it up later, Monday or whatever, and then just chuck it on my little green stack there. I've got I had a lot of this crap here all on the driveway, and I got a bit of an art where I can pick up wood with each hand and throw it backwards and sort of hit a general same spot. And a whole lot of this here, you've got box thorn there and the finer stuff here. All this here was thrown here without even looking at it. You just get the feeling of the weight and you know where it's going to land as you throw it without even looking. And I had a lousy 5 bits or 6 bits go over the top. That was it. And a whole lot of this. I've got quite a speed up. I just come along with both hands and just and yeah, really fling it out. But yeah, this is kind of ridiculous the way it's the whole firewood situation is here. I mean, you look at it all. You know, a few bits here. This is reciprocating saw stuff because it's far too hard on those blades. I got a bit of the other stuff here. It just gets a little bit, shall we say, out of control. But we're working our way through it. I'm trying to keep working on all this rubbish. It stinks. It pours out the smoke, but you know, got to get rid of it sooner rather than later because it's got a higher chance of going rotten or is already on the way there, comparative to the box thorn and all this stuff, which is basically all the stuff out of my grandfather's, and then there's a bunch of old old wooden posts and crap like this under here. And yeah, I'll probably end up keeping all these hardwood stakes because they're the same ones you use for like beans and tomatoes and stuff like that. One of these things, you know, there's so much, it's just ridiculous, and you just get to it when you get to it, but I can't help myself. I've got to keep cutting it up and keep dealing with it. It's like almost give me thrills in life cutting up wood or something. Well, it's a fair amount of wood here. I've still got to put a few star pickets in, but yeah, we done pretty well. There's a couple of odds and sods that I've got on top. You know, a bit of a knot, another knot. That one there's like a big blooming... I don't know what that is. I think it might be like where a branch comes off or so. It's basically a sap join. Sort of like what I've got in my house, but the feeling this is a knot on the other edge here. Yeah, you know, that might not be too good there. Some of it's quite a bit bad and a fair bit worse, and I threw that back here. So one day, in between flying to the moon and back and rejigging this and doing that and, you know, messing around with a blooming fence around the house and toilet system and a, you know, adjusting the rainwater system and blah, 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 blah. One day, I got to go and put some steps down to where those IBCs are, halfway down the hill. And stuff like this where you got a whole bunch of knots and splits or whatever, doesn't really matter because you only need, like, you know, 2.5, 3 foot. So the dirty big knots that you can't really see, there we go, and there, doesn't matter because you just cut, bang, and just piss that off, cut here again and make another step. And yeah, some of these are also a bit on the split side, really on the split side. Some knots didn't make it at all. So there's a couple of chunks in this I'm going to throw out and sort of pick my way through when I make steps. There's another massive big knot. And this should be fine for me steps anyway. And I'll probably even have stuff left over after this, after the steps are done. But yeah, I'll give them the better of the stuff, and because they want, you know, decent stuff that's going to go sort of, you know, like that length, like more than a yard long in one hit. But I don't need much for steps. As I was saying, some of it's just pure friggin' crap, which will find its way into the bin after I make the steps. But yeah, so I suppose I better go and light that little thing to burn the boxthorn sticks, and then I'll start loading the star pickets into the back of this. I got the big DeWalt grinder. I don't know how many years I've seen a big 9-inch DeWalt grinder. Might as well show you. Big bitch. So I'll take this to cut the star pickets up with. It was yeah, a reasonable price, but I tell you what, the power in this thing is unbelievable. It's one of the best angle grinders I've ever get my hands on, actually. Anyway, woo! That's what you guys like with a diesel start. Believe it or not, there's still some left. 2 colours of diesel in Australia, that colour, and then there's like a bluish purple colour. And I gather in England they've got a colour for the farm subsidised diesel that's different from the standard stuff. I've seen some dickhead on TV complaining that he wasn't given diesel, he was ripped off and given quote unquote this shit because he's too stupid to know that between the different brands of diesel in Australia there's 2 different colours of diesel. Having dealt with tractors, and particularly my uncle with diesel tip truck and the loader, and years of being on a farm and all that, you know, most of us around here knew that sort of stuff, but seems some people don't. Not the city types anyway. This guy was that crazy, instead of arcs around and find out, he ran straight to the media and ran straight to a laboratory to get a test on it to see if it was actual diesel. Meanwhile, that's what we've been using for years.